G'day everyone, not to rush you, but you have less than 1 week to finish all the remaining conquests available this season, including the Ultimate HyperNet Current and Ultimate Avalon. This video is a specifically designed build that provides long-range crowd control, great survivability, and a focus on helping you beat both of these strikes as easily as possible. I honestly wasn't expecting both of these conquests to be as punishing as they have been, but they really surprised me, and leaving them to the last second was a stupid idea. So to help you save some time constantly wiping and resetting just like me, trying a different build only for it to fail, I've got a Warlock build right here that you should be able to just copy and paste onto your own character and jump right in. Now before I keep going with the guide, I want to say two important things. First is to let other players know in the comments if you have strategies or tips that can help beat either of the ultimate conquests. Help each other get through these last two objectives because you might have the key that somebody else needs. And the second is a massive thank you to everyone who has been supporting the channel over the past year. It's been awesome growing my own community and making new friends. Now let's get into it. This build is a pure Stasis Warlock setup. Stasis Warlocks have always had the best crowd control amongst the three classes when using Stasis. The only issues Warlocks have had is gaining Frost Armour. Without it, you're basically a glass cannon in high-end content. But recently, because I've been trying to come up with different and unique builds, I've been looking into exotics that I have just completely disregarded in the past. One such exotic is Ballidorse Wrathweavers. An awesome interaction I didn't even know about with this exotic is that when you cast your riff with the Frostpulse aspect, you instantly give yourself and nearby allies max stacks of Frost Armour. This is a game changer for Warlocks because now we have both crowd control and survivability in the same build. And it should be no surprise that this is the exotic that I'm going to suggest we rock for this build. Having such easy access to Frost Armour on demand without even having to get a kill makes this build very easy to use regardless of the content difficulty, which is important because I've made this build primarily for use in Avalon and HyperNet Current. The aspect setup is obviously Frostpulse. Casting your Rift will send out a freezing shockwave and the range is pretty good. The second part of the aspect is freezing combatants generates class ability energy. This is crucial for the build since both our healing and our damage resist comes from using our Rift, so we need to make sure our focus is on freezing enemies. Now the best aspect to pair with Frostpulse for the ultimate conquest is Bleak Watcher. This gives us access to Stasis Turrets, which is our long-range, much safer crowd control option. I did consider Ice Flare Bolts, but because you need to shatter a target for these to be effective, I'm really suggesting you run Bleak Watcher Turrets instead. These turrets have been a community favorite since day one and are fantastic at freezing tons of enemies without requiring a kill. This without a kill mentality lets it scale into harder content without feeling much weaker compared to easier activities. Bleak Watchers will shut down the tankier and harder hitting enemies, allowing you to pace the fight at a speed that works for you and your team. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Stasis just inherently handles overloads, so using your Stasis turret allows you to have full control of overload champions, without needing to swap weapons and fumble through abilities. Just throw a turret next to the overload and shoot. Now the fragments for the build are as follows. Whisper of Rime, the most important fragment in this build. It increases the maximum number of Frost Armour stacks from 5 to 8 and increases the duration of Frost Armour up to 14 seconds. According to community testing, 8 stacks of Frost Armour is about 50% damage resistance. If that alone doesn't sell the build, I honestly don't know what will. With this fragment, all you would need to do is get your class ability regen to 14 seconds and your entire team would have near constant uptime of Frost Armour. And if your entire team is running this build, when they cast their rifts near you, you will gain Frost Armour as well. But I don't suggest the entire team runs this build because you won't have a lot of outgoing damage. You'll want to pair this build with a Consecration Titan or an Axion Dart Warlock. This way, while you handle support and crowd control, you make it safer for your team to move around and aggress. The next fragment in this build is Whisper of Torment, which is extremely important as it helps with looping Bleak Watcher turrets. Taking any damage gives you grenade energy, and at base, this is about 7%, but when you have Frost Armour active, this is increased to 12%, and since we're planning to have Frost Armour as often as possible, it synergizes perfectly. The third fragment in this build is Whisper of Refraction. Defeating slowed or frozen targets grants class ability energy. We already have a decent setup with the inherent bonus Frostpulse gives from just freezing enemies, but with Whisper of Refraction, we are able to take this one step further and gain even more class ability energy. The lowest amount you can receive is 9% from any basic red bar. And the fourth and final fragment to pair everything together is actually Whisper of Fractures. Shattering a target with a melee ability will refresh your frost armor. This is going to be extremely useful when you aren't able to get your rift back fast enough, because you can keep your frost armor going for longer just by shattering an enemy with your melee. It doesn't need to be a kill either, so long as the melee ability causes a shatter, you'll trigger the effect. The fragment is supposed to give you a stack of frost armor, but if you're at ×8, all that does is refresh it back to 14 seconds for you. Now moving on to the loadout. The exotic armor, as I mentioned earlier, is Ballidorse Wrathweavers. These exotic gauntlets are the cornerstone of this build. Without them, you won't have access to an easy source of frost armor. On top of providing frost armor, they also increase the potency of your super. Targets frozen by Winter's Wrath take increased shatter damage, which is about 150% increase. This will allow your super to still be a very useful tool for ad clearing in the ultimate conquests. And as if the exotic wasn't doing enough already, allies in range of Frostpulse not only gain frost armor, but they also gain increased damage with stasis weapons. But wait, there's more. Granting allies these benefits gives you super energy. Like, I feel so stupid for ignoring these gauntlets this whole time. These are some crazy benefits just from a single exotic. Now, even though we are going to get a bonus to stasis damage, I honestly think using Mint Retrograde is better. Rocket Pulses are only getting nerfed in Renegades, so while they're still strong, I think it's the best option available in the kinetic slot. You don't have to use Mint if you want to take advantage of the stasis weapon boost, but Mint is the most used weapon in the kinetic slot for a reason. In your energy slot, you should bring something that lets you handle either void shields or unstoppable champions. If your team has unstop covered, I suggest bringing a void primary instead. Across both ultimate conquests, you have a ton of void shields and a decent amount of unstoppables in HyperNet current, hence why I suggest covering these two specifically. In Avalon, you've got anti-barriers instead of unstoppables, so you'll need to deal with them. I've been running Drang this whole time, but I wish I had a primary alternative to handle void shields too. But with Touche active, you must be running new gear, and there is no void hand cannon or sidearm. In your heavy slot, run a good weapon for DPS. Pick an exotic or a legendary weapon that suits your playstyle. I've been defaulting to Finality's Augur because it's good for total damage and ad clear, but sometimes I've been running Tractor Cannon too. Not everyone would have Finality's Augur, so pick something that works for you. Moving on to the rest of your armor, stats, and mods. For this build, you'll want 100 grenade, 100 class, and as high into the weapon stat as possible. The ideal armor rolls would be a full set of Gunner with the third stat in class, but grinding that specifically for this build in a week isn't reasonable for most people like myself. So it's fine if you got a mix of Specialist and Gunner, just get the important stats up. If you're using a loadout optimizer, you want to make it 110 grenade because the Whisper of Torment fragment actually reduces your grenade by 10. The 100 class ensures anything that regens your class ability scales as much as possible, but if you think lower is just fine, then remember being under 30 will actually penalize you. Finally, a high weapon stat will mean more special ammo per brick, so getting this stat as high as possible will allow you to use Mint like it's your primary weapon. Now for your armor mods, on your helmet, I always suggest running 2 special finders to boost your ammo generation of special weapons, and power preservation so that your super can generate a few more orbs for your teammates. Since you're not dependent on armor charges, you won't need to generate orbs of power from siphons. On your gauntlets, run 2 bolstering detonations and fastball. Fastball is a quality of life mod, but bolstering detonation will let your turrets generate rift energy on hit without requiring a kill. On your chest piece, this is the most important part. If you're running HyperNet current, run Void Resist, Arc Resist, and a Concussive Resist. You will not survive the Taken Wall Blasts, even with 2 Arc Resists, so you'll find it more beneficial to protect yourself from the Taken Scions and Acolytes instead. If you're running Avalon, run Void Resist, Solar Resist, and Concussive Resist. Vex primarily use Void and Solar weapons, hence why this coverage is the best. Moving on to your boot mods, a stacks on stacks for the few orbs you do manage to collect from teammates, then a Strand Scavenger for mint, and a Scavenger that maxes your heavy. On your class item, run Reaper to generate orbs of power because you will be casting your Rift regularly. Proximity Ward so that when you perform a finisher, you have a massive overshield, which might save you in some cases from time to time. And then Special Finisher to generate ammo when you've picked up 2 orbs, helping with the special ammo economy. Now here's some tips and tricks for each of the ultimate conquests. Starting with HyperNet Current. In the beginning, you've got a few Cabal and the snipers up the back hit hard, so don't be afraid to use your heavy or your special to deal with them at range. When you push up into the cave, try to get your hands on all 3 arc craniums, but don't use them to clear the ads. Drop it occasionally to shoot the turrets and pick them back up again, keeping the craniums with as much ammo as possible until the Tormentor spawns. Having the craniums for the Tormentor will help shred it really quickly, saving you heaps of time and ammo. Further in the strike, when you reach the room with the Blights and Scions, again involving craniums, before destroying the last Blight, kill all of the available Minotaurs and have each member of the fire team pick up a cranium. When you go up the lift, some of these craniums will despawn, but at least one of them should remain usable. So at the top of the lift, destroy one of the taken wall blasts to make the Sparrow section an absolute breeze. Fast forward through the Overload champs and the Taken captains, when you reach the section that requires even more craniums, try to remove the Taken blight safely, and when there is only one left, have the entire team create and pick up whatever craniums you can so that you can carry them up the gravity lift and into the boss fight. I feel like the key takeaway here is always make craniums when possible, and the boss fight is no exception. Use the craniums for DPS on the boss, and whenever the Vex Minotaurs spawn for a mechanic, always kill every single one of them before completing the mechanic. This way you'll have arc craniums left on the ground so that you can use them for DPS again and again. Doing this will save you so much time that you can take the rest of the strike slower and safer. Now moving on to the tips for Avalon. The biggest thing that I can suggest is to play around your team and keep moving. The trade-off modifier Haste is active in this conquest, and it is a shit when paired with Brawn. It's a really punishing combination, and I'm kind of pissed Bungie added it. You can't peek back and forth around a corner for cover because you have to constantly keep moving. Hence why I think Stasis is the play. If you can keep the entire battlefield frozen, or at the very least controlled, it will allow you to play outside of cover more freely and spend longer in the Warlock rifts. Now at the beginning, when you have to shoot the shapes, I've got 2 helpful tips. The first is it's never triangle, it's always square or diamond. My second tip is if the order of the shapes goes square then diamond, or diamond then square, you can shoot both a diamond and a square in the correct order in one go, speeding up this intro section. Fast forward through the fight, when you're fighting the Hydra, every time you complete the Gambit objective, 2 Wyverns will spawn, and they can hit you when you hide in the hole. So remember to have some turrets active before you drop down so that they can freeze the Wyverns and keep you safe. I actually have an additional tip that I heard about while I was editing. I watched a Cheese Forever video and saw this, so I wanted to put it in here. You can skip the last jumping puzzle before the final boss by following this path here. Only one person in the team needs to do this because there is adjoining allies later. This will be faster than doing the jumping puzzle, giving you more time at the boss if needed. And my last tip is for the final floor of the boss fight. This floor sucks. The boss is so aggro, his rapid fire sniper rifle will absolutely melt you, so finding a spot where you can post up and deal with him is important. And I've found a spot at the back here. You can find it if you look for these pillars, and you should be able to jump down here and shoot the boss from this spot. And that wraps it all up. I genuinely think this build has gone under the radar for far too long, especially for team play and synergy. I've personally missed the days when the entire team needed to build into a role to complete a GM, so this was a lot of fun to theorycraft. As always, please don't forget to give the video a like if it helped you, and maybe consider subscribing as well if you like my other content. So as always, please have a wonderful rest of your day.